One of my all-time favourite campaign-length scenarios for Chaosium's Call of Cthulhu role-playing game is Horror on the Orient Express. First published in 1991 as a box set comprising 4 softback books, pamphlet sort of size, stapled booklets, these things, and a bunch of handouts and extras. It's currently in print as 2 hardback volumes. This is volume 2, quite sturdy books. And in between, it was published in 2014 in a revised and expanded form, running through a rather infamous Kickstarter project that ultimately led to Chaosium's current revival. Oh, a little bit ironic. I've covered all of that Kickstarter stuff in a previous video on Call of Cthulhu, so I'm not going to go into it too much here. The current 2-volume edition, it compiles material from the 2014, the Kickstarter edition, into 2 black and white 284-page hardback books with ribbon bookmarks in them, which is a good thing. Some other game manufacturers, especially large ones, to take note. Those ribbon bookmarks are very, very useful indeed. There's very little formatting that goes into those books to actually get them from the original format of separate booklets that were in the 2014 revision box set and the 2-volume hardback books, page numbering and so on, adding up. So it's quite clear in the new books where the division in between the pamphlet books it is, but it's not really a particular issue with that. If you do buy the books, or you want to go and buy the hardback books, I would recommend buying them from Chaosium, because when you buy anything from Chaosium, the PDFs come for free. If you fancy just getting the PDFs, then the PDFs are also available on Chaosium. At the time of this recording, the hardbacks are on sale at Chaosium, and they have been for a while, so it might be worthwhile going over to check that out on chaosium.com. So the PDFs are important if you're getting the 2014, the hardback, the book, this monstrosity of a thing, right? It's important to get that because the PDFs contain a whole bunch of the handouts and everything else that you will need to print out to provide to players. There's also some bits and pieces that are not in the volumes. The volumes at the back of the volumes, they have maps and handouts and so on. But there are a few things that are missing. Also, the PDFs that you get from the Chaosium, they have the revised versions of these books. So these are the 1991 version, but the 2014 box set off the back of the Kickstarter had the scenario published in this format, and the PDF that you get with the hardback version from Chaosium include that the scenario, the 2014 revision of these booklets. So that was a long-winded way of going about it, but basically you get all of the formatted original booklets, 2014 original booklets, along with hardback material, the actual books themselves. So that's it's a bonus. There's a bonus from that thing. So it's really do. If you're buying the hardback books, make sure that you're buying them from a source that will give you all of the rest of the PDF material for running the game, all the reference material, all the handouts, everything else, because that's it just brings the scenario alive and makes it a lot easier to run. So purchasing options out of the way, the purpose of this video, the main focus here is going to be broadly defining what Horror on the Orient Express is as an adventure, and a little bit of comparison back between the 2 versions. And so if anyone's got the 1991 version, maybe this will help in them deciding whether to go for the 2014 version or the current compilation of that in the hardback books form or not. It's up to them, but hopefully this will go some way. I'm also trying to make this video as spoiler free as possible, because I don't. It's one of those scenarios, like most of Call of Cthulhu scenarios, right? It's all about uncovering the mystery that's going on. So if you're a player and you're going to play in these things, you don't want to know anything ahead of time. And Horror on the Orient Express is so full of twists and surprises. It really is one of those things that you just don't want to know anything about it going into it, other than what it says on the tin. You know, it's going to be a Call of Cthulhu scenario, so it's going to have horror elements to it, and it's got a central theme of the Orient Express, which will tell you some other bits as well. So what I want to do at some point is do a not so spoiler free supplement to this, but if you are a player, stick to this one, stick to this video, don't go into the spoiler one if and when I do it until you've actually played through the scenario, but maybe use this to give the overview of it, that you can plonk in front of your local Call of Cthulhu keeper and saying, please can you go and pick this up and run it for us. It really is, it's an experience. So if you play Call of Cthulhu for any length of time or whatever, and you haven't played Horror on Orient Express as a scenario, then I think you're missing out, because it is rather special. The basics of it. The Horror on the Orient Express is a multi-scenario jaunt across Europe, which uses the Orient Express as a touchstone. So there's a common thread that runs through the whole thing. That should come as no surprise to start with. It's worked into the scenario's title. The scenarios link together to form a single epic narrative, and the players will get to have their investigators experience pretty much every aspect of Call of Cthulhu gameplay. So they'll be delving through libraries, they'll be investigating horrific happenings, they'll be going into old ruins or old places or whatever, engaging in frantic chases, confronting monstrosities, and otherwise attempting to stay alive and sane. Each scenario offers a different scenery, often thanks to the Orient Express and occasionally the train itself, and different challenges. And while there are common threads that run through the campaign, it never feels samey. Also, surprisingly, considering its central theme, it manages to never feel like a railroad. And that's something that I feel quite passionate about in role-playing games, and something that has turned me away from many sort of games and campaigns and scenarios in the past. Railroading is the practice of running player characters through a predetermined scenario, or the predetermined results of that scenario. So there's little that the players or their characters can do to influence the direction of the story. They are pretty much just swept along with it. It's like from this encounter to that encounter, and very little player agency in between. And I find that kind of play style a bit sort of distasteful and rather pointless in the grand scheme of role-playing games. Player characters must be permitted to forge their own path, their actions to be empowered to change the course of things as they go. Otherwise, you may as well be reading them a story or playing a board game which has defined boundaries, or something a bit more rigidly bound. Role-playing games, to steal a phrase, are a product of the imagination. And so if you are limiting that or stifling, I mean, obviously there's boundaries within a particular scenario or setting or anything else, but if you are further limiting player agency and character action to a particular straight line, a railroad, then it becomes a little bit disheartening. So the best scenarios adapt to the player character's actions and continue on in that form, and allow themselves to be shaped along those lines. And so horror on the Orient Express achieves exactly that, using sort of several sort of different tools. But those tools are common skills to the art of game mastery, but they're sometimes overlooked and sometimes forgotten, and sometimes scenarios just nail themselves down completely to disallow them. But in generally speaking, this is it comes in the scenarios in the form of advice, and that advice gives you a bunch of options. So if the player characters start doing stuff that the core scenario or the core line of the campaign doesn't expect, and it almost preempts the players having their characters do things that are unexpected. And that's, what do they say? The best scenarios are those that have a plot that doesn't survive contact with the player characters. But that's the sort of thing that the advice that's written into the scenarios is trying to give you. So some of the options are basically giving you ways or means of getting things back onto the plot line where that's necessary. There is a sort of core line that goes through, but most of it's about the way that the non-player characters, the adversaries, some of which the player characters will know about, some of which they won't, and some of which they will plague the investigators right from the start and won't reveal themselves right until the end. But it's how they react to the investigators' actions. So the investigators might go off on one route or another and achieve certain things that will then set their adversaries onto different paths. The adversaries themselves, the various factions involved in that, or individuals, characters, whatever, they all have their own agendas. They all have got some goals that they want to achieve as well. And so that goal, those goals that set out, kind of inform the keeper as to how they would react. And a lot of these advice is sort of, this particular people, they're going to want to do this, and if they can't because of this, then off they go onto there. So there's a lot of little snippets like that. The most important thing, and this is both in the 91 and the 2014, it iterates the fact that the scenarios are adaptable to the player characters' actions. So the investigators can do something, and it's up to the keeper to interpret that in the rest of the scenario to fit in with what the investigators are doing, not for the keeper to impose a particular direction of travel on the investigators. Let them be their own thing, and let's see how it's unfold. And there's enough structure in the scenarios and the campaign as it is for you to be able to mould it around the investigators' actions. So there you go. So despite it having a railroad as its central theme, it avoids being a railroad of a scenario in various ways. The original 91 box set comprises 13 adventures in total, plus source material, while the 2014 release ups that to 20 scenarios. It's predominantly set in 1920s. 1923, I think, is the specific year, but those additional scenarios are really very clever insertions. Some of them expand things out, make the plot potentially more complex. Some of them provide prequels, shall we say, that can be played out, that I think are a very clever mechanism as well, because it will give the players, not necessarily the player characters, but it will give the players some extra material and extra clues, and even some clues that will gestate for a while and won't become apparent to what they mean until much later on in the campaign. So I think they're really strong additions to the campaign structure as a whole. Sometimes you start inserting things into campaigns as well, they start to bloat out and become longer than necessary with unnecessary material. But I don't think the insertions. I've played through the 2014 one once, and I didn't find anything in there that wasn't that ultimately was superfluous. Everything had its place and worked really well. You can add to the source material, if you like. Both the box set and the 2014 give you a lot of source material on the Orient Express itself and on the cities that the characters will be visiting over the course of the campaign. You can supplement that with your own research on those. You can surely round things out if you like. I don't think you need to do much more research into each of the locations beyond going and having a look at their Wikipedia page and seeing what historical background you're looking at and the sort of flavour of each of the cities. There's enough material, there's enough source material, especially in the 2014 version, to be able to bring these places alive enough for the scenarios to work. Certainly your own research can build on that, but for those that are a bit adverse to doing extra prep and diving into to things, then you don't need to worry. There's not a whole amount of that's required. You can do as much as you like, obviously, but you don't need to do any beyond the books themselves. So there's a number of handouts. The handouts, like I said, for the 2014 one, unless you've got the box set that came off the Kickstarter, the original format of it in 2014, the handouts come in PDF format. So if you buy if you get the hardcover books, some of the handouts are repeated in the back of the hardback books. Some of them are available only in the PDFs that you get with the hardback books, and in the 1991 version there's a whole bunch of inserts and things to cut up and all of this kind of stuff. So they're really quite good. Some of the handouts are just add flavour. There's things like passports and stuff like that, and some of the handouts will give you some additional, well, the usual Call of Cthulhu fare, like article cuts, snippets and things like that. One of the really important handouts that came with the 2014 thing is this little thing, right? This, which is the Traveller's Companion, right? And this, I think, is absolutely essential if you're going to play it. For a start, it's an immersion thing. So you're going on the Orient Express, and they provide you, the Orient Express company, they provide you with a little guidebook, and here you go. Here's your guidebook that you get as a passenger that will tell you about the various cities and places that you find on the way. Right. So that's the first thing. It's a prop. It's an immersion prop. However, I think, and the way I've used this book, it goes beyond that. It goes beyond being a mere prop, because it will provide the investigators with information about that's necessary for the scenarios if they dig into it deep enough. On the simple surface is things like where's the library, where is this particular location, we need to go and find this particular thing, where would that be, and so on. So a lot of that information is in here. There are some snippets in here that will give them clues as well if they delve into it enough, but also there's enough space. As you can see, all the text is fairly well spread out, and there's some blank pages as well, which means the player characters can use this to scribble on and to highlight and to stick things in it and to write notes up and to add things in the margin as to what they found where, and just keep a sort of running note log of what's going on. So it helps them in the fact that they're keeping notes in things that are, like, oh, we found this in this particular map, whatever. All of that kind of stuff. Really useful. And also at the end of the campaign itself, if they use this as a primary note-taking tool, they will have something of a log. I mean, obviously a campaign diary and everything else, but they'll have a little kind of takeaway booklet with all of their notes in it and everything, a nice little souvenir to close the campaign off. So I very, 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 very highly recommend you go and knock off a few copies of this. The PDF of the book comes with in the PDFs that you get with the Chaosium edition, and well, you can print on demand. It's fairly easy to go and knock a couple of copies off. I think 2 or 3 and one for yourself as keeper is just enough. But I can't stress how useful that little book has proven to players within the campaign. So a few specific questions, kind of like a Q&A. I won't call them frequently asked questions because I'm making them up myself, and so no one's really frequently asked them. But some questions that I ask myself when considering especially longer scenarios as to their usefulness, or what I'm going to get out of it, or my group are going to get out of it. But also, if you have any further questions that you want to ask about the experience I've had with the game, with the campaign, or anything that you want to know beyond that, then yeah, please just use the comment section, and I'll do my best to answer any of your worries and fears. So, first question of my pseudo frequency asked questions would be, how long does it take to play? Now, the span of time will depend on how many sessions you do, what kind of, and how long those sessions are, and all of those vagaries that I don't know about. However, what I can tell you is that each scenario, depending on your focus of play, should take between 1 to 2 or 3 at most sessions to play out, of reasonable length sessions. So across the course of 20 adventures, you're probably going to go between 20 to 30 odd sessions in total. So yeah, buckle yourself into that one, because it's not a short scenario or short campaign to go through, but it's varied enough. I think one of its beauties is that it's a fairly long campaign, but it's constantly changing shape, destination, whatever, and it doesn't feel repetitive. So it's fairly long. It does start to get fairly involved, but it's not particularly tedious because of its length. So that's a good thing. But yes, it's fairly long, but it's worth playing. As for experience, I would suggest that the early scenarios are suitable for inexperienced players and keepers. Now, they're not set out to be beginner scenarios, and so none of the sort of tools or help or whatever that you would normally get in a starter set kind of scenario are there. It's just presented as a scenario, but the first couple of scenarios especially, because there's not much complexity going on at that point. I mean, within the player's perspective, the scenario has other things going on. The campaign has got other assumptions going on, but from a keeper hasn't got really any of the considerations as to what's happening in the background yet. It doesn't really need to know too much at that point, and the players certainly don't need to know a whole bunch. They haven't needed to take reams of notes as yet. They haven't had to tie any things up. It's all a fresh slate and just to go from there. So, and they're not complicated scenarios. There are some complex scenarios in there, but the first couple aren't particularly. They're quite straightforward. So I think as long as you are familiarise yourself with the rules and know what's going on there, for a new set of players and the keeper, I think you should do okay with a bit of applied brain matter. If you do have a group that is concerned with safety features, I would suggest having a conversation with your players regarding their red lines. There is gory and horrific scenes within the campaign, Call of Cthulhu is, after all, a horror game. So you might want to check with them where those red lines are. Some of the scenes can be admitted. Some of them can be played out off screen, if you like. So you don't necessarily expose someone, or you don't need to expose anyone to anything that they don't feel comfortable with. But that being said, it is as a horror campaign. I think if you're playing a horror campaign, a horror game, whatever, and your players don't feel comfortable, then that you're kind of on a winning streak, because when you're watching a horror movie or when you're reading a horror book or whatever, you should not feel comfortable. They should make you feel scared and a little bit, out of your comfort zone. But there's a difference between that and things that will really upset you. And what we want to do in any kind of entertainment or whatever is to avoid those things that will upset you, and steer clear from them. So that's the sort of thing we're looking at. So, someone, you need to have a grown-up conversation with people. That's basically what's going on, and consider people's where their red lines are and how they feel. Get them to be scared, sure. Upset them, not a good thing. Lastly, what do you need to play it? Well, pretty much any edition of Call of Cthulhu will work. This is one of the beauties of Chaosium's games. Even edition to edition, materials and everything else tend to be compatible. So, I use quite regularly materials for all sorts of editions of Call of Cthulhu. Currently use the 7th edition of the rules, but with stuff from way back to first. So it doesn't really matter. I mean, the horror on the Orient Express, I played the 1991 version with both 4th, 5th and 6th edition of the rules, and I've played the 2014 version with the 7th edition. So knock yourself out with what edition you want to you like best. I don't think there's anything in there that you would have to really concern yourself about. Obviously, if you're familiar with, if you pick up the 2014 version, which assumes 7th edition, the way that stats are used is a little bit different, but it's not rocket science to go and switch back and forth between the two. But beyond that, make sure that cannot reinforce strongly enough that you make sure that you have the PDF stuff with the handouts, the additional handouts, and copies of the handouts that are in the books, because you will need to print them off so you can actually hand them out. And also the Traveller's Companion is absolutely essential, I feel. The Traveller's Companion, by the way, it's not in the 1991 version. It's just it was an addition into the 2014, but I think it's such a fantastic addition to the game. There are some of the handouts that were originally printed on cardboard in the 91 version. I don't know if they were. I don't have the 2014 box set version, so I don't know whether those handouts were printed on cardboard for that. However, when you get to see which handouts are what, then you'll understand which ones would serve well being printed onto card, or at least backed with card, because it's a good thing. There's things that the player characters have to collect, and if they've got nice solid versions of those particular things, then it serves the campaign and the immersion of it well. And there were also some that were kind of printed on parchment or parchment-ish in the 91 version, and they're black and white in the current version. So a bit of treatment, aging stuff, baking in coffee or tea, that sort of thing, is of the order of the day, just to make them appear ancient enough for that immersion. It's far better than just receiving a black and white facsimile of things, isn't it? If you've got something that resembles, that is ancient, brown and crumbling. There are passports, and in the handouts, PDF versions of them as well, passports that are 1920s, and they are 1920s United States passports. So if you are playing non-American investigators, then I would recommend going and checking out Base 113's games passport facsimiles. They've got a PDF of them, Drive Through RPG, and I'll link that in the description. There's got all sorts of different nationalities as well. Horror on the Orient Express really does lend itself to investigators from different nationalities participating. There's no real assumption that they are American characters, and they don't need to be American characters, and they can be American characters. It's all pretty much down to player choice, and even more than that, the player characters don't even have to know each other at the start of it. So the investigators, the early scenarios, could have an element of the investigators getting to know each other and being introduced to each other and all of this. And beyond that as well, replacement characters, which if anyone's played Call of Cthulhu knows is something that can happen for various reasons, or the need can arise for them. Because you're sort of travelling on the train for chunks of the scenario, having replacement characters join the train, just get on board and then fall in with the rest of the investigators, is a fairly good little mechanic to include in. But as far as additional rules go, you don't need anything but the core Call of Cthulhu rulebook, but you will find some of the alternative setting rule books for Call of Cthulhu useful for the 2014 edition. I won't say much more than that, but I will say a bit more than that in the spoiler, not so spoiler free version or video. If I do that. I do really want to do it quite a lot, because I'm having to curb what I'm saying there a bit as it's coming to mind. I'm going, I could talk about that. No, I can't talk about it. All right. But anyway, so some of the alternate settings, alternate timeline rulebooks will be really useful to have on hand for the 2014, but they're not strictly necessary, and they would only serve to really enhance the way that elements of the campaign are played out, rather than as a necessity for playing them out at all. Everything that you need that differs from the core is pretty much in the book, including new spells that are and so on. And that's it really. It's a fantastic campaign to play through. It's lots and lots of fun. It can pretty much absorb a whole heap of time for quite some time to go through, and it's just but I personally, I think it's my favourite campaign length scenario for Call of Cthulhu, because of the variety and the interaction and all sorts of reasons. I just think it's very well done. It's very well put together. The overarching storyline to it I enjoy, and as well, when you read through a scenario, when you're doing your prep to play a scenario, and this is what it did for me back in the early 90s when I first picked it up. When you're sitting there and you're reading through it in order to play it or just run it as a keeper, and you are being drawn in yourself into the storyline and wanting to follow it through the scenario, through the campaign, when you're getting things and working out what you're going to do with it with the players. Something that will draw you in as a keeper into you're just buying into the whole thing, and entertains you as a keeper from the keeper's side of the screen, so to speak. I think that's a really good mark of a good scenario. And it's one of those. It's definitely one of those. You won't be bored going through the material as a keeper by any stretch of the imagination. And that, in turn, should inspire you to bring a level of enjoyment to the players on the other side of the screen and bring horror to their investigators. So, yeah, like I said, if you haven't played it before and you're into Call of Cthulhu, you're missing something special. So I would recommend you give it a go. If you've got the 1991 version, it's been sitting on a shelf for the better part of so many years, then put it down, dust it off, play it. It'll be worth it. Anyway, that's it for this video. The next video will be one on mathematics. If I can summon the willpower to finish off editing it. It's proving to be quite a slow whatever. It's I created a rod from my back and then now desperately ploughing my way through it. And then we'll be back on to more milieu and more other odds and sods as we go. And hopefully, touch wood, or touch veneer, or whatever the desk is made of, we'll be back on to a regular schedule now that August is pretty much done and dusted, and I'm another year older. But there you go. Such is life. So until then, take care and have fun.